design. We've been dealing for the last 4.5 weeks from a book called The Church of Facebook by a man named Jesse Rice. And today I want to deal with the second reality that he poses in his book, and next week we will conclude with the third. And the second reality is this spontaneous order can generate outcomes that are entirely new and unpredictable. A couple of years ago, there was a pretty famous album out by Jamie Foxx called Unpredictable. And in that there were songs and various things, and I would dare not even go into the songs that are in the album. But there is something very peculiar, for the sake of this message, at what happened when it was released.
Go ahead,
when you look at what happened on that weekend of the release, there seemed to be a difference in the response and how people were receptive to the song. Not necessarily because of the music, but because whenever you are developing or designing a product, there are teams of people who sit and try to find the best title to go with what you're trying to offer, because they understand that it is by your title and your presentation that you are able to bring people in. And so when you understand this, you will find that everything Jesus did, he was intentional. And I'm going to just look at 3 things that we can do to follow the model that Jesus implemented by divine design. The first thing is that Jesus was a realist. He was real. And because he was real, he knew how to handle himself. Notice what happens. They are in the suburb of Bethpage, and while they're in the suburb of Bethpage, prophecy is being fulfilled. Because the disciples are given a special mission. Go, and you will find a donkey tied and secured. And then you're going to see someone else. And if they ask you what's going on, tell them the Lord hath need of them. That's a very, very strange declaration. First of all, it's a very strange declaration because when you understand the history of that time, those who were followers of Jesus expected him to bring a political regime and not for him to come on a donkey. And that's a very strange thing because you're literally saying that this man who you sat and seen people prophesy about was coming to redeem the world. But yet he was coming looking nothing like what they expected him to look like. If you probably would put Jesus in the average church today, he probably wouldn't fit in at all. Because we have so much commercialized and changed our approach to adopt where we are. So they were expecting a political regime and not a rabbinical priest. Jesus. Are you hearing me this morning? It was the prophecy that was being fulfilled from Zechariah 9, chapter 9, verse 9. I'm not going to look into that today. But there were some things that he gave us. Albert Einstein said your imagination is your preview to life's coming attractions. So therefore, the Old Testament is the scope or the lens by which we are able to prepare ourselves for Jesus. And so you will find and you will see that Zechariah begins to tell them and gives a warning to Jerusalem. And then when he gives a warning to Jerusalem, he reminds them there are 3 things you should expect to see to know the king has come. Why? Because he explains to them that number 1, the kingdom's coming. Number 2, he's coming gently. And number 3, he's coming on top of a donkey. Now that's a bit strange for a savior of the world. Wouldn't you expect him to be in a Bentley? Wouldn't you expect him to be in a Maybach? Wouldn't you expect him to be in a car of some type of status? Why a donkey? Especially since those who are in the Sanhedrin, they sure wasn't riding on a donkey. But he came in humility, trying to teach the religionists a lesson that they still didn't get. And so there is something very interesting about the Palm Sunday experience that is unique, because you will find that in the other Gospels, Jesus also explains to them while he's preparing for the Passover, and he tells them, you're going to find a man carrying a pitcher of water. This is almost heretical, because men in that time, and even if you go over there now, did not carry pitchers of water. But he instituted and implemented that he was bringing change to the culture. Wow. And if he's bringing change to the culture, if the man is the head of the culture, he has to put the water in the man's hand, because he's the water of life. Jesus. And so if Jesus is, number one, real, he understands that there will be opposition to the change he brings. And that's why he explains to them that when you go outside and you begin to change stuff, somebody's going to ask you, what are you doing? And he said, when they ask you, tell them the Lord has need of them. Now, why would he say the Lord has need of them when he understood that technically he still was preparing himself for Calvary? He hadn't died yet, but he understood that the time had come for them to know who he was. Why? Because if you look back at every single miracle Jesus did prior to him preparing for crucifixion, he constantly told the person, go, sin no more, tell no one, go, sin no more, and show yourself to the priest. And that was it. He tried his best not to cause public disruption. But as the time draws closer to his descent, he awakens them by explaining to them, these are some signs you should look for. And even when he gives them signs to look for, they still did not know who he was. If his own disciples, who sat with him for 3.5 years, saw him lay hands on the sick and they got up, saw him raise dead people up, and all kinds of stuff, but they still did not know who he is. Is it possible for us to come to church week after week, Sunday after Sunday, leap and shout, jump and sing, fall over the floor, run around, and still have no idea the God we worship? Very true. Very, very true. And therefore, we have developed a Christless culture in the church because we love to be like the Sanhedrin and prop ourselves up and walk inside of an assembly. But yet we don't know how to reach those around the environment. Remember going to dinner one night, those who were there remember, and I was sitting down talking to some lady, and we were ministering to her and told her where we were and the address and all that stuff, and made a statement to me and said, I know where you are, because there's people around that church where when I go outside to speak to them, they don't even speak to me. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. You know, it's so sad. things like that happen. And it began to bother me because I said, wait a minute, have we developed such a mindset where we're so excited to get in the house that we forget that Jesus' original intention was for us to bring the house to them?
Jesus.
Let's look a little bit here. Number two, first of all, Jesus was real. Number two, he was relevant. Someone say relevant.
Relevant.
Which means he knew how to handle others. Number one, real, he knew how to handle himself. Number two, relevant, he knew how to handle others. He knew the value of his volume. He knew the value of his volume. There were things that he deliberately said because he knew what he was saying. And since he knew what he was saying, he knew how to work with what he had. So he communicated well with those around him. He communicated well with those around him. And he spoke clear and direct to those on his team and the multitude. I forgot the name of the book because there's so many books we've been reading. But one writer said that Jesus spent 80% of his time in public, 20% of his time in private. But it was that he did in his 20% that enabled him to do the 80%. So you will find that there was something very significant. So now they did as he requested, use their own clothes for a saddle. And then he prepared to go out. And as he goes out, he is preparing himself to receive the homage or the adoration of the people. Many received him as their king. Why? Because they spread cloaks and branches before him. People are standing around. This is not some type of a fairy tale, folks. This is real. In reality, if it had happened today, it would have been the equivalent of Obama walking down the street. People were running literally up to this man and throwing stuff at him. I remember when I was with the Rochfords down in New Orleans, and I had never seen anything like that before in my life. I was so happy to come home, and I was out there, and they were throwing beads out the sky. I said, what is this? Click my heels 2 times and go back to Brooklyn. And I'm out there, and they throw, I said, hey, if somebody hit me, it's going to be on. They just throwing it, they driving these big old vans and woo, throwing beads to everybody, flinging it. And people jumping out there and grabbing the beat. And I'm saying to myself, what's going on? Yeah, it's all right. And I said, what's going on? Everybody, people walking, wearing the beans around their neck and people walking around. I just put a few in my pocket for my brother and went on back home. And so we're out there, and it's late at night, and everybody is running down the street. Everybody. People have all kinds of stuff, trust me. All kinds of stuff. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, it's time for me to get out of here now. I'm going on. And so I had never seen that before. They had streets from 1 block, 9 blocks down, blocked off. I had to find another way to walk. I left my hotel. Pastor Parrish fell asleep on me. And so I had to walk. Yes, he did. And I had to walk all the way down the street and go across and all of that stuff. And I'm trying to figure out my way through a city I've never been in. And so I go to find them. And when I go to find them, everybody's just jumping around and leaping. It was a very exciting time. It was very scary. I mean, come on. I'm not used to that stuff. And so I understand. I can understand this text. Because Jesus is literally telling them, it's time for me to triumph.